Autism vlogger followers. It's Carrie here. I don't feel like this is center for some reason, but it's Carrie here, and the next couple videos, well, this video is going to be a story time. Not only does my channel do vlogs, I also want to do story times and other videos. And this video is going to be a story time about my previous cat who I had before Kit Kat. His name was Mittens. He was also orange and white, and he had an extra toe, which I will pause this video, cut this video out to insert a picture here. Okay, now that we're back, I want to talk about how I got him first, and then, how he passed away. It was back in 2011, like November of 2011. How old was I? I was 13. I was 13 years old. My sister had just started college. She went up to Edinburgh University near Erie, Pennsylvania, which Erie is a big city in Pennsylvania, if you don't know. She went up there, and that's where she and her friends discovered Mittens, this orange and white cat who had the extra toe. He was a chunky boy, and she discovered him. And they kept him, and they were going to keep him themselves, but they couldn't keep a cat. So then, during Thanksgiving, my sister brought him home, and I ended up becoming his parent. And ever since then, I fell in love with him. He was such a laid-back cat. He'd let me do anything to him, dress him up, put him in different outfits, put him in different poses. He'd let me do everything and anything, which in the next video, which is a video tribute throughout the years that I had him, little snippets of him, you'll see that, and you'll kind of laugh. Everybody loved me taking pictures and videos of him, because he was just so laid back. He'd let you do anything. But anyway, time went on, he got older. In 2017, though I feel like this doesn't relate to how he passed away, well, actually before that, Mittens had 2 previous scares with death. So in total, he had like 3 death experiences. The third one was his final. But the first one was like a couple years after I got him. We were smoke bombing our house for bugs or whatever, because you get them foggers that you put throughout your house and they fill up with smoke and they kill all the bugs and stuff like that. And you're supposed to have all your animals out of the house. Well, lo and behold, which my parents had an enclosed outdoor like porch, which thank God that was where he was. Lo and behold, I forgot that he was in the house, and we had just went uptown. We were like gone for 10 minutes or so after setting them off, and I forgot that he was in there, and I realized I'm not sure where Mittens is, so my parents drove us all back to the house. And my dad went inside with the smoke bombs going off. I had to cover his face to look for him. And on the inside of our house, you have to go inside, and there's like a enclosed porch attached to the living room / dining room. And he was sitting on a shelf in there. And when my dad brought him out, luckily he was fine, thank God. I picked him up, held him in my arms, and just cried, because I was worried that, I would kill him. But thank God I didn't. The next near-death experience, which this is so bizarre, we can't figure out what happened to cause this or anything, but it all kind of started when Mittens started refusing to eat. This was in 2017. He started refusing to eat, and we thought that was weird. So we were looking at him, and I was force feeding him water and food, and my mom found a tick on him, and she's like, okay, let's take him to the vet in Glendale, which is the vet that you just saw in the previous video that Kit Kat goes to now, which is why I took Kit Kat there, because her brother went there before for hospitalization. So we took him there. They told us that there's no chance that he has Lyme disease because it wasn't really all that known in this area. But since he wasn't eating and stuff, they basically hospitalized him. So he was hospitalized through the weekend, put on IV fluids and things like that. And he just wouldn't eat. And, I was fearing towards the end of the weekend because there was, no change in him, and we couldn't figure out why. If he doesn't eat, he can't live, and I thought I was gonna have to put him down then. But then he got released from the hospital. They gave him an appetite medicine to make him want to eat. But luckily, even though they also gave me some pills to take home, luckily the dose they gave him at the vet or whatever worked, and he turned back to normal. From 2017 to the beginning of 2021, he was a normal cat, played, slept, went outside, wanted me to give him drinks out of the sink. You name it, he wanted it. But in 2021, in I think it was February. Hold on a second real quick. Hold on one. Okay, so in 2021, which, when I took him to the vet previously, obviously we didn't know how old he was because he was already an adult. He was a neutered male, so obviously he'd been to a vet with his previous owners because he was neutered. But he was an adult, and we didn't know how old he was. But the vet rated him at rated that his birthday was around in 2005. So in 2021, he was likely to be a senior cat. In February of that year, which in December 2020, I want y'all to know, I got him the feline leukemia shot. And this is going to be important here in a few minutes into the story. But in February 2021, I noticed that Mittens, which he'd never done this before, he started eating his litter, his cat litter, which I thought was kind of odd. And I quit working, so I was pretty much living on disability, and I have more disability now 2 years later than I did 2 years ago, and my dad was also laid off, so there was no way they could help me take him to the vet. So we looked up things, and sometimes cats do eat litter because, their diet's changing and they're not getting the nutrition from their current food. It's kind of almost like pica, but in cats. Which pica is people eating non-food items because they're missing minerals and stuff like that. So we did some research, and we thought that's what Mittens had. And I feed him the 9 lives like I do Kit Kat now, which sustains her. Never seen her eat litter. She's only 2 years old. So we thought, after doing research, maybe he needs a senior blend of that because he's not getting all the nutrients from just the regular adult blend. So we switched him over to a senior diet. I didn't really notice him eating cat litter much anymore, but then in April I started noticing he was doing that again. He was eating cat litter. At the end of March and April, I started noticing he was eating cat litter. Between April and May, this is when things really happened, because he died on the 16th of May. But anyway, in April, the one day, shortly before I started noticing him losing weight, I was in Waynesburg, PA with my dad at his camper, which my mom was away doing something. She went up to her house and was doing something. I was all alone while my dad was at work at the camper with Mittens for the day. And I was watching Mittens, and then all of a sudden, he started having this breathing spell where it seemed like he was just breathing heavy and he couldn't take in a breath. I don't know what it was. it only lasted like maybe at most 15 seconds, and then he returned back to normal as if nothing happened. So I told my mom about it, and she goes, well, have your dad check him out tonight, have him listen to him and see what he thinks. And since that spell pretty much ended when my dad came in, obviously, he seemed normal. And then like a few days or so went by, a few days to like a week or so went by, and I started noticing Mittens was losing weight. He was a 19-pound cat. He was a 19-pound, just 2 to 4 ounces. Like he would either lose a couple ounces or gain a couple ounces here and there. I think when he was at the vet in December 2020, he was 19 pounds 3 ounces, which he always kind of maintained that. And he was an active cat and stuff. He was both active and sedentary, so he was getting exercise. He'd go outside and stuff. But anyway, I noticed him losing weight, and I said to my parents, do you think he's losing weight? And they looked at him and they're like, no, not really. Which, you kind of almost couldn't tell in a way, too, because his fur was kind of bushy. Even though he was kind of a short-haired, like, Kit Kat, his fur kind of was poofy a little bit. So, I honestly think my parents knew that he was losing weight, but I think they didn't want to scare me because what had happened when my mom's dog had cancer, not to backtrack, at the end stage of his life, he started rapidly losing weight, and you could notice. So I think my parents, or at least my mom, knew in the background, but knew deep down, but I think she also wasn't trying to scare me and wasn't sure. But anyway, I started noticing him losing weight. And we went to West Virginia, to Ripley, a couple weeks later, because my dad had to go there for testing, which Ripley is like below Parkersburg, because we were going to go to South Carolina next. And obviously Mittens seemed to lose weight, but he acted totally normal. He acted like himself. He still let me dress him up. He still let me do everything. He would eat, poop, sleep, drink water out of the sink. He was totally a normal cat. But when we went to Ripley, again, my mom had to go to her house for something, and I was left there alone. And Mittens, again, had one of them breathing spells, again, which I thought was odd. And, my parents, at this point, since he had this twice, they never witnessed it. Only I did. But he had a breathing spell for, again, another 15 seconds or so, where it seemed like he was struggling to breathe, like breathing heavy. I told my parents about it, and they're like, well, he's not really doing it now. Maybe, he was just coughing or something like that. And so we let it go since he stopped. But anyway, he continued to lose weight. On our way down to South Carolina, which this was around May 11th, about 5 days before he passed away, which everything went so fast at this point. We went down to South Carolina. He handled the trip like he normally does. He acted normal, even though he had all the weight loss and stuff. He did great on that trip. But anyway, this is where the story kind of gets sad in a way. Couple days later, we had to go up to Moundsville, which is where I currently live. But last year, you all know, in like 2020, the middle of 2021 into 2022, I didn't live in Moundsville. We went to go to Moundsville because I wanted to move from New Stanton to West Virginia, and there was an apartment in the actual town of Moundsville for rent. So we went there to look at it. And we went there to pick up my dad's friend. Short story, obviously, I didn't get that apartment because I ended up moving to Fairmont. And now I am in Moundsville, but in a different apartment. I didn't look at this one when I went to Moundsville. I looked at something else. But in the middle of the day, for some reason, because we were gone for a couple days, this is now May 15th, the day before I put Mittens down. I don't know what it was, but in the back of my mind, I just had this thought that I'm gonna come to my parents' camper and I'm gonna see Mittens dead. I, that's a horrible thought, but with everything that seemed to be going on with him, I don't know why it was in the back of my mind. But then it dissipated. All was good. We drove down to North Carolina, got something to eat with my dad's co-worker, and got to the camper. As soon as we got to the camper, because our camper's a fifth wheel, so like when you walk in, say this is where you walk in, to this side, to your right as you walk in, you go upstairs, you got the bathroom, my parents' bedroom, then this side, you got the entrance to my bedroom, the kitchen, the living room, and all that. Mittens was sitting on the steps, on the top of them steps, which there's like 3 little steps. He was sitting on the top, kind of like in the hallway. And I took one look at him, which he was alive, by the way. I took one look at him, and something told me there was something wrong. Something told me, it almost seemed like he was cosmetically telling me, hey, I need help. Something's wrong. I need help. He just kind of looked sickly. And I took him to my bed, and he really started having them breathing episodes, and finally my parents noticed it, and I'm like, please, there's a 24-hour emergency vet hospital in Columbia, which, we were about an hour away from. I'm like, we need to take Mittens there. I feel like something's wrong. My mom's like, no, that's too far away. But she ended up looking up other hospitals, and she's like, I found this hospital that's like a half hour away, 25 minutes away. It's a 24-hour animal hospital in Florence, South Carolina. Let's take him there. And she noticed the breathing. But again, as we put him in the crate, he stopped. He kind of went back to normal. We put him in the crate, we drove there. Usually sometimes when we go on rides, just like with Kit Kat, he'll meow and stuff like that and squirm around. He was silent the entire ride, not a peep out of him, which was kind of unusual. But we got to the vet, and the vet came out, the nurse or whatever came out and checked his vitals from the crate, so really they couldn't really tell. But they're like, his breathing sounds normal. But mind you, he was in a crate. And they took him back in, and they took him inside, did an x-ray, did blood work, and stuff like that. But they didn't tell me the results yet. They came back out. The vet came out probably like a half hour or so later. Mind you, this was about around 11 o'clock that we took him. So it was about 11:30 or so when he came out. And he's like, well, he showed me an x-ray, and Mittens' lungs were just filled with fluid. And he said, I think it might be asthma. If it is, I'm gonna do a steroid and an antibiotic, and you'll need to follow up with his vet in like a few days. But he said, he's like, I'm waiting on blood work to confirm, because I happened to look at Mittens' gums and his paw pads, and they were pretty much just white, he said. So even though I'm thinking it's asthma, there could be a small chance that it's not, and he has cancer. And I kind of lost it a little bit, but, my mom reassured me, it might probably be asthma, he's probably having a weird reaction or whatever. And we asked how long it would be till we get the blood results, and they said about 30 to 45 minutes. So we ended up driving around looking for gas stations nearby to get drinks and all this and that. But like all of them, pretty much all of them closed at 11. The one that was open, there was this sketchy lady there wanting money and stuff, so we didn't bother. We spent a half-hour driving to different gas stations that were closed. One that was open, we didn't want to bother because that lady was there. So we went back to the animal hospital. We got in the parking lot, and there were other patients, and to the right of me there was this other patient that the vet was talking to about her animal. And then all of a sudden, after he's done, he starts walking over to our car to talk to us about Mittens, because this was also during kind of close to the end phase of the pandemic, so we weren't allowed inside just yet. And my mom's like, uh-oh, this can't be good news, because the vet had a grim look on his face. And so I'm like, oh no, what's wrong? And the vet came to me, and he told me, he goes, his blood work does not look good. He lost 1/4 of his blood. He's anemic. He lost 1/4 of his blood. And the vet goes, I'm pretty sure it's cancer. And the cancer's eating away at his blood. And he's like, you've got about 3 options. You can either take him home. He probably has about 2 days left. And basically what's gonna happen is most likely you'll start to notice he'll turn blue because he'll drown in his fluids, because like I said, his lungs were full of fluid. Or we can do a blood transfusion and, keep him hospitalized, but that's likely only to give him a week. Or you go with the third option and, put him to sleep. And my mom's like, well, can she go see him first? And he goes, yeah, y'all can come in and see him. But, I didn't fully make the decision till I saw him. I was upset, because what I figured is, I'm just wondering if it was feline leukemia that I said to y'all that I got him vaccinated for December 2020. So I kind of blame myself, and I just wonder what if I was trying to protect him back then. But I feel like it's my fault sometimes. But anyway, I went in there I saw Mittens on the bed, the little hospital bed, which they had him on oxygen because, he was having trouble breathing. So he was on oxygen, and then they took him off and let him adjust to room air. And they said he's going to seem like he's going to have trouble breathing because he's got to adjust back to that room air. He was doing that thing again with his lungs. And, looking at him, I then knew. I turned to my mom and I'm like, I can't wait a couple days. I can't put him through this. I said, it's time. I didn't want to say goodbye. I'm trying not to cry. And so I said to her, I'm like, hey, since my dad was back at the camper watching Benny and Bailey, her dogs, I'm like, hey, can you get Dad to come here? And, they kind of had a little bit of a bickering match about directions because, my dad had never been that way. And plus, it was dark out. When it's dark, you get confused. But my dad showed up, and he came in, and the doctor's like, you can spend as much time as you want to say goodbye and all that. And so, pretty much, we spent time holding Mittens. Mittens would fall asleep in all of our arms, and he would wake up and let us pet him and rub up against him. He seemed so peaceful. And, I talked to one of the receptionists, too, about him, and they're like, he really is a sweet boy from what we see. And, I got to spend time with him. And then, I finally told my mom, I'm like, all right, let's not delay the inevitable anymore. Even though I wasn't really ready. Like, can you press, because there was a button on the bed that you had to press. I didn't want to do it. And so, I told my mom, I'm like, can you press it? And she did. And the nurse came in and said, he's in surgery right now. It'll be about another half hour if you're okay with that. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to get him prepared. I'm going to take him back real quick, which I'll bring him right back to you. We're going to put the IV in so that way he doesn't have to get poked a few times. So they put the IV in. They brought him back. I got to spend a little more time with him. And then finally the doctor came in. And before I made the final decision, before drugs were administered, I said to him, which I also, by the way, I didn't mention, I also had the option, because he wasn't really fully sure. The only way to be fully sure that Mittens had cancer was to do an autopsy. But that's besides the point. He came in, and I looked at him and I said, are you sure that it's probably cancer? And he goes, I'm about 99.9% sure. I can't give you the full 100% without an autopsy, but I'm 99.9% sure. And then he also didn't tell me out in the car because he probably knew I was upset and needed time to process it. But he's like, also too, Mittens' sodium levels were off the charts. Like literally, he said the machines would not read his sodium. That's how high it was. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. And as I had Mittens lied on the bed, and as he lied there, I grabbed a hold of his paw with his thumb. I really wanted to go with him. Like, I didn't want to die, but I wanted to go with him and keep him company to where he needed to go. So that way he wouldn't be alone. But I also wanted to come back. And I also said to him, because you all know I have depression and anxiety and suicidal tendencies and stuff, I made a promise to him. I said, Mittens, I'm going to try to get help for my depression. And I said to him, I promise I won't kill myself or hurt myself. I want you to note that. And, I really hope I kept the promise. Even though I had some instances afterward, but I'm still alive. So I'd say I probably kept it. But anyway, the vet came in, and I held Mittens' paw with his extra thumb, and he administered the first dose of medicine, which put him to sleep. He wasn't dead yet. It just put him to sleep, So when they did the overdose, he obviously wouldn't be conscious of it and wouldn't suffer during the overdose. And he's like, before I administer this dose, he can hear you and stuff, so say what you want to say one last time. So I did. I think I told him I loved him and stuff, and he administered it. And he took the stethoscope to Mittens' chest to see if there was a heartbeat, and he was gone. And we all stayed in the room, which I wanted his eyes to be closed because, I don't like touching dead bodies. Even once it just passed away, I don't like touching them. and I wanted his eyes to be closed, which he did kind of keep them closed. But when he obviously passed away, he started relaxing and they started opening, even though I tried to close them. Which he had. He also, while I was holding his paws, he fell asleep. He put his head on this hand, and his head was still there, and I was messing with his eyes with my other hand. And finally, I gave up and I let go of his hand and we said our final goodbyes. And I said to my mom, I'm like, should we press the button for the nurse? And she goes, what for? And I'm like, because I don't really want to leave him alone. I want to make sure somebody picks him up and takes him back to wherever he needs to go. Because the nice thing about this vet, which thank God, because all this happened so quick, they worked with a cremation place that cremated him, gave me his paw print, gave me his fur clipping, which the vet also, shortly before Mittens passed, they gave me a big bag of fur. They're like, hey, do you want a fur clipping? I'm like, yeah. They gave me that, and I'm lucky, they worked with a cremation place, because I had no idea what the hell to do. And so he passed away, and we got the nurse to come in, and she took him, and we went home. And pretty much that day was it was May 16th, early in the morning, like at 3 in the morning, when he passed away. And that day was just a freaking blur. But I said to myself, I'm like, I don't want any more cats. I don't want cats. I don't want to think about getting another cat for at least a month or so till I have time to mourn. But obviously the next day, I thought about a cat, because that whole day I felt lonely, felt empty without him. And that's when I got introduced to Kit Kat, which she was just a little itsy bitsy baby, and obviously I didn't get to pick her up until June, which thank God was about a month later. So if you think about it, even though I knew I was getting her, I at least had time to grieve Mittens too. And later on that week, when my head kind of cleared a little bit more, I realized, well, I want some of his nail clippings too. So I called the vet office, and they gave me the number for the cremation place. And the cremation place was so sweet. They got his nail clippings for me too, which I thank God. But yeah, basically, that's Mittens' story. If I missed out on some things, I'll make another video in the future, but that's the gist of it. This video's already like 20-some minutes long, but that's the gist of it. If y'all watched, I really appreciate it. If it helped anybody, I really appreciate it. And you know what? I had this earned for 2 years, but this is Mittens. Which, another thing too, I forgot to mention at the vet, as I said, Mittens had weighed 19.3 pounds in December of 2020. At the vet, he was down to like 13.5, which I know is still pretty good for a cat, but considering he maintained that 19 pounds and he lost like 4 pounds so rapidly, that ain't good. But yeah, so basically, that's his story. The next video be a video tribute to him. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you want me to make another video about Mittens in the future, and you have questions about him, leave them down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next one.